give you a little bit of background on each one of these, but before I do that, I'd like to introduce Jim Woodward. He is the legal counsel for the bond issuance. He's with Miller Martin. Right, make sure I got that name right. Always got to get that plug in there. Jim will be glad to answer any questions on the technicalities of the bond and the resolution. But as far as the background of the projects, the Series A bond, which is the bond not to exceed $1.2 million, is a bond to construct a water tank located at or near the airport. This project has been developed out of the need to provide sufficient fire flow, not only for the airport but also for the Airport Technology Park. I think all of you are aware we have hired Arcadis to design the Airport Technology Park. And I say we, I mean the Paulding County Industrial Building Authority has hired Arcadis to do that work, and they are the group that has evaluated the need for the water tank. Wasn't a surprise to us. We knew that we were going to need a water tank out there at some point in time, and in order to continue construction on the airport with the corporate hangars and start construction on the Airport Technology Park, the water tank is needed to provide the fire flow required for those facilities. The Series B bond includes funds for a hangar at the airport and a film studio project. The hangar project is a joint venture between the Paulding County Airport Authority, the Paulding County Industrial Building Authority, and the Paulding Jet Center, which is our FBO at the airport. The purpose of this is to provide a facility for the Paulding Jet Center to bring businesses to the Paulding County Airport. We do have 2 businesses that are currently interested in locating there, and obviously they need facilities in order to do that. So this would facilitate the recruitment of those 2 businesses to the Paulding County Airport, but also provide a place for larger hangar storage. I think all of you have been out there and have seen the hangars that have been built, what we call the T hangars, which accommodate the smaller personal-owned airplanes, but they will not accommodate the larger corporate-style airplanes. So in order to recruit those aircraft to our airport and be able to sell larger amounts of gas and collect larger amounts of ad valorem tax, we've got to have facilities available to park those planes in. So this provides for that. The second part of the Series B, the film studio, is a project that we've been working on in the county for, I guess, about 12 months now. We're working with a group out of California, Roadtown, to provide a location in Paulding County for the filming of feature films. I think everyone now has seen in the newspapers and probably has heard at different chamber events about the films that have been filmed in Paulding County over the last 12 months. And all of those, for the most part, are due to the state's incentives that they have put into place. Georgia has become one of the premier states in the country for filming not only movies but TV and commercial ads as well, due to the state's incentives. It's a growing industry. The incentives have only been in place for a couple of years. There are only just a few facilities available in the state. So we're getting on board with this very, very early so that we can take advantage of the incentives the state has put in place and the fact that there are really very limited facilities in the state for these films and TV shows. If anybody's got any specific questions on the projects, I'll be glad to address that. And as I mentioned, Mr. Woodward is here to address issues with the bond resolution and the legalities of those.
Can I make about the film studio? I mean, of course, that's a big word, and none of us really well, I don't say we don't understand it, but ultimately it's buildings that, you know, that they're going to use, but they could also be used for any industry that may choose to move here. If after 5 years, 10 years, something goes away with that, we still own buildings that are worth what we put in them, and we can bring other industries to them, correct?
That is correct, and as a matter of fact, we have been able to take advantage of an unfortunate downturn in the economy with an existing building and some existing developed property that unfortunately ended up back with the banks. common issue throughout the entire country. We've been able to take advantage of that, and we're going to be acquiring an existing building and some property that has been developed, and we're frankly acquiring it at a very, very discounted price. So we are going to be building a new building, which will be about a 60,000 square foot building to go along with the existing 30,000 square foot building that is there at the property. But the new building and the existing building could be used for many, many different usages in the future. A film studio is really kind of for lack of a better term, a fancy warehouse. It has some lighting capabilities and some insulation and some soundproofing that you wouldn't normally find in a warehouse, but the facility can easily be converted to manufacturing, industrial, distribution, a whole host of other uses. So we feel very, very good about the project in that, as I mentioned earlier, there are very good state incentives available, and we know from our personal experience here in Paulding County that movies are being shot here. So we still feel very good about the business prospect, but it's good to have kind of a backup plan, so to speak, and with these facilities they will be in a prime location in our county, and I don't see any problems whatsoever with converting them to another use in the future in the event that the studio industry dries up for whatever reason.
This is something I've been working on for approximately a year. You know, the public, there's still people out there that don't like the airport. It's here, it's built, it's $50 million the federal government put in it, and we're going to make it be successful. And to be successful, we have to construct the water tower that will help us with Joey and his crew be able to fight a fire if needed. The second part of that is the Paulding Jet Center, which we knew coming in there were some great opportunities. There's a gentleman that owns a company in Tennessee that would like to move that company here, and with the banks not loaning money, we do a very cash-rich company that could make the monthly payment, come in and be able to within the next 36 months take that burden off of us. And the last is referred to as the film studio, but more than this is an investment in a project that unfortunately developers lost. And frankly, I don't think we'd be able to move forward with this had we not been able to pick this up at a bargain and then be able to, at this time, construct a building at much lower cost than we ever had in the past. Now, you can sit and do absolutely nothing and wait for stuff to come, or you can get your county ready. The first part of that was yesterday when we attended a 70 county attendance at the Capitol to receive camera ready status. It's something the Chamber's worked on very hard for us. It's the beginning of the film industry for us, and it was a good day to get started. So, you know, for me, it is projects that I've worked on for about a year, as you know, to form the economic development group and to get an economic director in here that could help us sell our county. Some people say, well, why don't you do that as a salesman, which I am. And my background hasn't taught me where to find those people throughout the world. But what my background has is the moment they're turned over to me, I can sell the fire out of this county. So I just want you to know that it takes that person, it takes us all getting on board. And certainly it's a time in hard economic times, I think, to lead us out of this recession. And I'm willing to put that burden on my shoulders. So I just want to make a public statement that it's something I am working towards for the future of Paulding County.
One thing about the bonds, to make sure I understand, I mean, the IBA is selling these bonds. Paulding County is strictly backing the bonds and saying, in case the IBA's project doesn't go, we would pay the bonds. So we're not, in other words, we're not agreeing to pay for the bonds, the county's not.
Well, basically the revenues from projects can be used to pay for the bonds, but you know, basically the intergovernmental contract does say that you know you'll levy a tax up to $1 million to pay for the bonds to extent the revenues from the projects do not cover, the principal and interest payments on the bonds.
Obviously, the Industrial Building Authority has other projects that we're working on. We foresee the need in the future to do additional bond issuances for both the parks, the Rail Spur Park on Bill Carruth Parkway, as well as the Airport Technology Park itself for the construction of that park. So we have, I don't want to say a mixed bag, but we have a lot of different things going on, and these are just a few of the projects that we have in the works. And some of these projects, such as the water tank, obviously doesn't generate revenue, but the projects that it supports and the growth that it supports will generate revenue. The Industrial Building Authority will use all of its revenue proceeds to make sure bond payments are covered.
Okay.
I think Tommy asked a question, and I don't know that I understood your answer. How are we paying for the bonds?
Okay, well, I think he hit on this spot too, but to
Okay.
the extent the revenues, some of the projects do produce revenues, whether it's leased out, film studio, or the hangar space. Any lease revenues coming in from there can be used to pay principal and interest on the bonds. But the primary, backup, and this is where we get the credit rating and the low interest rates, is by an intergovernmental contract between the building authority and the county, whereby the county pledges, it's not its full faith and credit like a general obligation bond, but basically pledges general fund dollars, but also a mill cap of 1 mil on ad valorem taxes to pay for it. And so to the extent revenues aren't available, which could be the case, tax dollars will be used to pay for the bonds.
I guess put in English,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Blake and them have done their studies, and financially, these two projects will pay for the bonds, okay? But because Blake is not credit worthy, the county is going to say, okay, we'll co-sign those bonds with Blake, and Blake's going to pay them. Now, for some reason, if Blake didn't, then we would have to step in. But Blake has a plan, or the IBA has a plan to pay them from the revenue of these projects.
Yeah, I like you saying the IBA has a plan better than Blake has a
Yeah, I
plan.
know.
But and I'll mention that this is the way all industrial revenue bonds are done. I don't know of any industrial entities that back their own bonds. They're all backed by a county or city or some form of municipality. This is the traditional process for an industrial revenue bond.
Any more questions?
How are we going to pay for the bonds while we're getting ready to do the projects that we're doing, and they're going to start producing an income?
It built into the borrowing amount of the bonds, the amount of proceeds that'll be come in, is something called capitalized interest.
Okay.
And so basically it'll be borrowed amount of bond proceeds, placed into a separate account held by the by the paying agent bank, and up until I believe it's August 1st, 2012, that money set aside, which was borrowed, will be used to pay the first interest payments. And so that'll allow enough time for construction of the projects and revenues to start coming in to pay for the bonds. And so that's built in, and it's very common for all bonds that finance construction projects to have a capitalized interest component built in, and so that's how that's going to be covered.
So outside, other than the water tower, the film industry, Blake, and the hangars are going to bring in the income to support the bonds.
That is correct, and
Okay.
as well as other projects that the Industrial Building Authority already has in the works that aren't bonded projects, that are just projects that we've done with existing capital. But I also want to mention to you that the Industrial Building Authority made sure that we kind of waited till the last minute we possibly could to issue these bonds. In other words, we've already done most of the engineering. We've already submitted plans to the county on the hangar. So these projects are ready to go. It's not that we're going to start putting plans together after these bonds are issued. These projects are already ready to go. Leases are already signed for the hangar. As far as ground leases are already signed for the hangar. So we're going to break ground on these projects very, very quickly, and it's important to us to get them built as quickly as we can so that they do start generating revenue, and we're not just sitting back taking our time and utilizing those proceeds that Jim mentioned. We'd like to minimize that construction time so that we minimize the amount of bond that's actually spent on interest carry, I guess you would call it.
Jim, is there any prepayment penalty in that the Paul and Jet Center could take this project and fund it after 36 months? Is there any prepayment penalty in that?
The way the bonds are structured right now, there's an optional call for the bonds, which can be paid off at 10 years. That's a standard provision for all bonds, and that's what the market likes to see, and generally gives you your lowest interest rate. And so basically after 10 years, you will be able to call these in at no prepayment penalty, basically at cost, and pay them off. So basically at 10 years, you can bring those in. We discussed doing things out 20 years. Possibly we have them set up in the initial resolutions, which is this one and the bond resolution adopted by the IBA last Wednesday on the 16th, to go out 30 years if the numbers look better for that. But first 10 years, they'll be in place, but then anytime after that, y'all can call them in at any time. And that's something that can be discussed as well. We can build in other prepayments, but that's just the most standard one that the market commonly sees, and I'll get you your lowest interest rate. And so if you do try to pull it in tighter, say 5 years, generally the market's not used to that, and the interest rates will go up for the borrowing.
As far as the, excuse me, as far as the film industry, Tommy might be able to elaborate on this, that a lot of people think, well, we're so far out from Atlanta, but we've received some letters stating that they have acknowledged that what we're doing, and we're not too far out, so.
Yeah, ultimately, we contracted with Roadtown to negotiate with the Teamsters and what they call the IOXI union that says we're within the zone, which means that it's like working locally. So we've got favorable approval from the unions that they will support the facilities, which, it's like labor supports what we're doing.
We have a new airport they fly into.
I understand the water tower is not going to produce any money, but it's going to be there for something for the future. And I understand the hangar. As far as the film industry, you feel confident that $5 or $6 million, that's going to generate the income that we're going to need, that you guys are going to need, the IBA is going to need.
Right. The performers that we have that have been created by Roadtown are based on work that they've done, not in California, because what they've done in California wouldn't be comparable to what we're doing here, but work that they've done in other states such as Arizona, Mississippi, and Georgia as well. So they've used the existing market and the existing industry to create those performers, which indicate to us that the project will make money and that it will be successful. We have also, obviously not just taken their word for it, we have gone to the Georgia Department of Economic Development, which has a film industry division, and we've actually sent Roadtown's performers to the Georgia Department of Economic Development and asked them to take a look at it for us. So they have reviewed those and given us feedback that they appear to be consistent with what they see in Georgia, what they see in our market, and that they don't see any issues with the performance. So having that level of expertise from Roadtown, as well as the Film Industry Division of Georgia Department of Economic Development, has given me the level of comfort that I need, because obviously I'm not in the film industry, so we needed to go to the experts, and those are the experts that we have available to us.
And you guys are going to be hiring them, is that correct?
It'll be a contract, and that is
Okay.
correct. We will have a contract with them to assist us with the design and construction of the facility,
Okay.
and then a separate contract to operate and manage the facility. So there'll actually be two contracts in place.
And one thing, this creates jobs. Now, a lot of times when you say film industry, you're talking about, you think that Mike Jones is going to be a new actor, but I mean, the support staff, I mean, they have to have carpenters, electricians, plumbers, they have to build sets. I mean, this goes along with where we need jobs and new jobs here in the county. I mean, a film coming into town actually generates jobs that our citizens can go get hired and work, in trade they already know.
It does generate a significant amount of jobs. The other thing that's very significant, I think equally as significant, is the amount of sales tax that something like this will generate. When they come in to film a movie, they may bring anywhere from 100 to 200 to 300 folks in with them in order to make that movie. So that generates a huge amount of sales in terms of hotel rooms and our existing facilities in the county. I strongly suspect that you'll see some new hotels come in as well due to this facility, but also places like Home Depot. They build sets for every show and movie that's done. So restaurants, caterers, just about any kind of support service, whether it's a barber or anyone that provides a support service, will see an increase in business due to the facility.
Most of the people that work in the union live above I-20, and there's no film studio located above I-20. So we're encouraged by that too. And you know, if you look at aviation, healthcare, and also the movie industry, they are ones that continue to seem to do well even in hard economic times. So we've kind of put our focus in those three areas to hopefully be able to position Paulding County to come out of this recession.
Thank you.
That's the conclusion of a regular business session. I appreciate the interaction from the staff and the commissioners. Great questions. Do I hear there's no closed session, no citizen wishing to speak. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.